Welcome to CrimePod Castle Unsolved Mystery Series, episode 43.
43, that's right.
And today we're diving deep into some murders that happened back in 2012 in Alwar, Rajasthan.
All right.
These weren't, your average murders. They were fueled by something pretty dark, something ancient,
Oh,
the belief in witchcraft.
yeah. It's a chilling example of how, even in the 21st century, ancient superstitions can have, deadly consequences.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to be unpacking today. The events, the victims, the investigation, and the theories surrounding these so-called witch hunt murders.
Sound good.
All right, so imagine this. You're in rural India where tradition and belief run deep.
Okay.
In this setting, anything that disrupts that natural order, misfortune, illness, even a bad harvest, can be blamed on supernatural forces.
Right.
And that's where the concept of the witch comes in.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's the most vulnerable members of society.
Oh, really?
Yeah, women, widows, the elderly who are singled out and they become scapegoats for events they have absolutely no control over.
It's almost like a pressure valve, right? When something bad happens, the community needs someone to blame,
Yeah.
someone to focus their fear and anger on.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, it's often those who can't defend themselves who bear the brunt of that fear.
That's a really powerful way to put it. And what's even more disturbing is that these accusations are rarely just about superstition.
Oh.
Yeah, think about it. If you wanted to seize someone's land, discredit a rival, or just get rid of someone you didn't like, accusing them of witchcraft, could be a pretty effective way to do it.
So we're talking about something much more sinister than just blind faith.
Right.
Power manipulation and personal agendas hiding behind a mask of superstition.
Exactly. And that's what makes the Alwar case even more intriguing, because it forces us to ask, were these murders driven purely by fear of the supernatural, or was there something more calculated, more human at play?
To understand that, we need to look at the victims themselves. The first to die was Lakshmi Devi, a 60-year-old healer. She was brutally attacked and burned alive by a mob in February of 2012.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't get much more horrific than that.
No, it doesn't. And her death, it sent shockwaves through the community, and you could practically feel the fear in the air.
Right.
People were terrified of being accused nextwhere. And tragically, that fear would claim more victims.
Yeah. Over the next few months, 3 more people were killed, each accused of witchcraft.
Wow.
A young man and then an elderly couple all met the same brutal fate.
That's awful.
It's hard to wrap your head around that kind of mob mentality.
Yeah.
How accusations fueled by fear and rumor could escalate to such extreme violence.
It's almost as if logic and reason get completely suspended when people are swept up in that kind of collective frenzy. Like they become convinced that they're doing the right thing, protecting their community from an evil force.
Right. But even within a mob, there are individuals, people who make choices, who incite violence, who perhaps even have their own scores to settle.
Yeah.
So what happened when the authorities tried to investigate these murders? Did they find those responsible?
Well, the investigation was incredibly challenging. Witnesses were terrified to come forward, worried about becoming targets themselves.
So the very fear that fueled the murders ended up hindering the investigation.
Exactly.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is. And then there's the inherent difficulty of proving individual culpability within a mob
Right.
who struck the fatal blow, who instigated the attack. It's a tangled web, and that made it very difficult for investigators to build a solid case.
So you have this chaotic environment where fear reigns supreme, evidence is scarce, and witnesses are reluctant to talk. It's no wonder the investigation struggled to uncover the truth.
Yeah, and that lack of clear answers only adds to the mystery, leaving us with more questions than answers.
Right. Were these truly acts of blind faith? A community consumed by its own fear of the supernatural?
Or were darker forces at play? Did individuals exploit these superstitions for their own gain, manipulating others to achieve their own twisted ends?
Yeah, that's the heart of this deep dive, isn't it? Trying to separate the genuine belief from the potential for exploitation.
To do that, let's look at the different theories that emerged around these murders. One theory is that the villagers genuinely believed they were dealing with witchcraft.
So pure superstition fueled by fear and ignorance.
Right.
But you said earlier that these accusations are rarely just about the supernatural. Couldn't someone have used that fear to their advantage?
Absolutely. That's another prominent theory, that these murders were fueled by hidden agendas. Maybe someone wanted to get their hands on Lakshmi Devi's property,
Right.
or eliminate a rival.
Oh, hey.
Accusing them of witchcraft could be a way to turn the entire community against them.
That's chilling. It makes you wonder how many times throughout history similar events have happened.
Uh-huh.
We tend to think of witch hunts as something from the distant past, But this case shows that those same impulses can still exist in modern society.
It's a reminder that the human capacity for fear and manipulation is unfortunately timeless. And think about how those dynamics play out in a small, isolated community like Alwar. Everyone knows each other. Rumors spread quickly, and fear can take root easily.
So someone could whisper a few well-placed accusations play on existing anxieties, and suddenly you have a mob convinced that a harmless old woman is a dangerous witch.
And once that belief takes hold, it's hard to stop. People get swept up in the frenzy, their judgment clouded by fear and the desire to conform.
It's like a modern-day witch hunt, fueled by the same primal instincts as those that occurred centuries ago. But there's a third theory, right? The one about external manipulation.
Right. This theory suggests that someone from outside the village might have exploited the community's existing fears for their own benefit.
So an outsider, maybe with political ambitions or a personal vendetta, comes in and stirs the pot, using the belief in witchcraft to incite violence and achieve their own goals.
Exactly. They could spread rumors, plant evidence, or even bribe individuals to make accusations. It's a scary thought, but it highlights how easily fear can be manipulated and used as a weapon.
Okay, so we have these three main theories: pure superstition, hidden agendas within the community, and potential manipulation from outsiders. It's a complicated picture, and it makes you wonder if we'll ever know for sure what truly motivated these killings.
And that ambiguity is part of what makes this case so fascinating, but also so unsettling. It forces us to confront the darker aspects of human nature, our capacity for cruelty, manipulation, and violence, even within the context of a seemingly tight-knit community.
But even beyond the question of who did it and why, there's the question of lasting impact. How do families and communities cope with such horrific events?
The scars run deep. For the families of the victims, there's the unimaginable grief of losing a loved one in such a brutal way. And then there's the added pain of knowing that justice may never be served.
It's like a double blow, a wound that might never fully heal. And what about the community as a whole? How does a place like Alwar recover from such a dark chapter in its history?
That's the real challenge. How do you rebuild trust? How do you address the underlying fears and prejudices that led to these tragedies?
It seems almost impossible. If fear and suspicion can turn neighbor against neighbor so easily, how do you ever create a sense of security and unity again?
It takes time, education, and a conscious effort to confront those harmful beliefs. It's about promoting critical thinking, encouraging open dialogue, and challenging those who exploit fear for their own gain.
So it's not just about catching the perpetrators. It's about addressing the root causes, the social and cultural factors that make such atrocities possible.
Exactly. It's about building a society where reason and empathy triumph over fear and superstition. A society where those who are different, those who are vulnerable, are protected rather than persecuted.
It's a tall order, but it's a goal worth striving for. Because in the end, the Alwar Witch-Hunt Murders serve as a stark reminder of what can happen when fear and ignorance are allowed to take root and fester. They remind us that the fight for justice and enlightenment is never truly over.
And they challenge us to be more vigilant, more compassionate, and more committed to creating a world where such horrors are relegated to the history books, never to be repeated.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the Alwar Witch-Hunt Murders, I can't help but think about how easily these kinds of things could happen anywhere.
That's the truly unsettling part, isn't it? The ingredients for this kind of tragedy, fear, ignorance, the desire to find a scapegoat, they're not unique to rural India.
Exactly. Think about how quickly rumors spread online, how easily people can be manipulated by misinformation, how often we see groups turn against individuals based on unfounded accusations.
It's a reminder that we're all susceptible to these kinds of dynamics, no matter how educated or rational we think we are.
So what can we do about it? How do we guard against these darker impulses within ourselves and our communities?
I think it starts with cultivating a healthy skepticism, questioning what we see and hear, especially online.
Right.
Don't just accept things at face value. Dig deeper. Look for evidence. Consider different perspectives.
It's about being critical thinkers, not just passive consumers of information.
Exactly. And it's about having the courage to speak out when we see injustice happening, even if it's uncomfortable or unpopular.
Because silence only empowers those who would exploit fear and ignorance for their own gain.
Absolutely. We all have a responsibility to be guardians of truth and justice, to stand up for those who are being targeted or marginalized.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, that an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us.
And it's about remembering the victims of these tragedies, not just in Alwar, but everywhere. Their stories serve as a warning and a call to action.
A reminder that the fight for a more just and equitable world is a constant one, a fight that demands our attention, our energy, and our unwavering commitment.
Well said. Let's hope that by understanding the forces that lead to these kinds of events, we can work together to prevent them from happening in the future.
And on that note, we want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this deep dive into the dark heart of human nature. We hope this episode has challenged you, informed you, and maybe even inspired you to be a force for good in your own corner of the world.
And be sure to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle Unsolved Mysteries series for more deep dives into fascinating and thought-provoking topics. Until next time,